So the incident that set the stage for us very nearly going to Iran, a war with Iran just about a month ago, turns out might not have been what we thought it was all along. So they had a belief that this Iranian-backed militia had attacked US military assets. A contractor had lost his life as a result of that. That was the pretext for later escalations, the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, eventually missiles being launched at a US base. There are a number of soldiers with brain injuries as a result of that. Obviously, a passenger jet was shot down. More than 170 people lost their lives as a result of that. So the pretext for this seems pretty important because it was incredibly consequential. So let's talk a little bit about what was believed to be the case and what we now think might have actually been going on. So the United States blamed an Iraqi militia with close ties to Iran and bombed 5 of the group's bases. Angry Iraqis then stormed the American embassy. You probably remember the footage of that. The US then killed Iran's top general. Iran then fired missiles at our forces and shot down that passenger jet. But Iraqi military intelligence officials have raised doubts about who fired the rockets that started the spiral of events, saying that they believe that it's unlikely that the originally mentioned militia could have actually carried it out. So Iraqi officials acknowledge that they have no direct evidence tying the December 27th rocket attack to one group or another, literally to any particular group. American officials insist that they have solid evidence that Kataib Hezbollah carried out the attack, although they haven't made that evidence public. That has been a stance in terms of the intelligence from the beginning up until now for everything having to do with this. But here are a few interesting facts. So the rockets were launched from a Sunni Muslim part of Kirkuk province, notorious for attacks by the Islamic State, a Sunni terrorist group, which would have made the area hostile territory for a Shiite militia like Kataib Hezbollah. Kataib Hezbollah has not had a presence in Kirkuk since 2014. The Islamic State, however, had carried out 3 attacks relatively close to the base in the 10 days before the attack. And the abandoned Kia pickup from which the racks of rocket launchers were deployed in that original attack was found less than 1,000 sight from the site of an ISIS execution in September of 5 Shiite buffalo herders. And so I can't now transition to, and here's what is definitely true, we don't know. But what evidence has been presented to us implies that the original story doesn't really bear out, or there's not much reason to believe it at the very least.
So the initial intelligence that the United States relied on in an effort to pin the death of a US contractor on Iran is not reliable. And it's crazy because usually the United States, when it comes to foreign policy, only acts if they know they have reliable intelligence. Because you don't want to kill innocent people whenever there's any type of military aggression against a country abroad. Usually there are civilians who lose their lives. There are lives on the line, oftentimes innocent lives when you're trying to take someone out. So you've got to make sure that that intelligence is foolproof and it's not faulty. And look, I'm being sarcastic. Obviously, the United States acts on faulty intelligence all the time, which is why we have all these drone strikes that take out all these civilians abroad. It happened under the Obama administration. The Trump administration has expanded that. And we're killing innocent civilians in Yemen every single day. We're still doing Saudi Arabia's bidding. So it doesn't surprise me that the United States wouldn't, make sure that their intelligence is foolproof before acting. The thing that does shock me is that things haven't escalated further. That Iran did not escalate things further when the United States used this faulty information to eventually take out their top military general. And that's not to say the top military general was a good guy, as we've said over and over again on this show, he was not. But in Donald Trump's abrupt decision to go after him and assassinate him, that led to a dangerous domino effect that luckily didn't escalate to a full-blown war with Iran.
I wonder if the escalation is just in the works. It's always like, when you attack an adversary like Iran, because we have such an overwhelming military force, the attack is something that may come later, and it may come in a way we don't expect.
Right.
That's what I worry about the most, and that's probably what will happen. But doesn't Congress have oversight about this kind of thing?
They're supposed to.
Wouldn't they then sort of want to look at the intelligence and examine its credibility?
So Congress is supposed to be a check on the executive branch's power, especially when it comes to these types of decisions, like taking out a country's top military general. But no one in Congress was informed about it. And if I remember correctly, the Trump administration cited the AUMF, which was only supposed to be about Iraq, after 9/11, as their excuse for doing what they did without congressional approval.
Yeah, 1,000 years from now, we're gonna be like landing Marines in Alpha Centauri, and the AUMF is gonna be used as a pretext for it.
Yeah.
And so there's supposed to be a check, in particular on the use of the war powers. Back 50 years ago, they passed new legislation to reassert that they'd be able to do that. They've been unsuccessful up until the last couple of years in ever doing that, and only then because of the work of people like Ro Khanna and Bernie Sanders. And they tried to pass limitations on, after all of this happened, they tried to pass limitations on the ability of Trump to unilaterally start a war with Iran. And obviously that didn't go anywhere in the Senate. But you did have, I believe even Matt Gaetz might have, yeah, I believe it was Matt Gaetz that might have signed on to it in the House. So it was successful there. Yeah, I know that we've moved on to other topics. Impeachment obviously was a big thing. We got the Iowa debacle and all that. But I still very much believe that between now and election day, it is going to come up again. Whether he honestly wants to go to war or if he's going to cynically use it to try to get perhaps the media to stifle some criticism of him, I honestly don't know. But I don't think that this is the last we've heard from the hawks when it comes to Iran.
I don't think it's the last we've heard of Iran either before the election.
I agree.
That's the thing. And in terms of congressional oversight and holding the executive branch accountable, apparently that is no longer a thing. And so I worry about that as well.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be routine to just ignore congressional oversight and requests for intelligence, and we're kind of screwed that way.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And a lot of power has been concentrated in the executive branch since 9/11. This isn't something new. This is something that's slowly been happening since 9/11. And the way that this was sold to the American people was, well, we need to protect national security. So as a result, we need to give the executive branch, the president of the United States, all this power when it comes to keeping the country safe. And what Congress needs to understand is when you're signing legislation that gives the president power to act without congressional approval, then if you're comfortable with the current president doing that, well, you got to keep in mind that someone like Trump can get elected in the future. And if you believe in our system of government and you believe in checks and balances, then there shouldn't be any type of situation where the executive branch can just act without any type of check on power.
Yeah, and let's bear in mind, we have what appears to be so far unsubstantiated original reasons for starting this conflict. But then also the killing of Qasem Soleimani. I mean, you probably remember like the week of laughable media appearances by Mike Pompeo and others trying to imply that they had intelligence, but what that intelligence represented just kept retreating until it was basically the guy sucked, he was mean, and so we killed him. That's the sort of thing that in the lead up to the war with Iraq, we took seriously, supposedly the intelligence. And some people's reputations after the fact were sort of destroyed because they spread bad intelligence, or it's believed that they manipulated what was there. But in the modern environment, like this story, who's gonna be talking about this in 2 days? The fact that the intelligence around Qasem Soleimani specifically, there was obviously nothing there. It was like sort of a joke for a week and then we moved on. And that's not just sad in hindsight. Going forward, Trump is not going to have to find a good prerequisite for war with Iran. He can come up with anything he wants, knowing that there won't be any consequences if it turns out that it was exaggerated or entirely falsified.
Yeah. And look, he wants an enemy state, and Iran is that for him. And he's going to keep beating those war drums all the way up to the election. I think you're right. I just hope that the Pentagon has kind of learned its lesson and won't present a menu of really bad things. Now that they know that Trump will pick that one,
the worst one. Yeah.
They'll give him a few sort of lesser damaging ones.
But how would the Pentagon know? How would they predict that Donald Trump would pick the worst option from their menu, right?
I think we're all learning about his mental instability on a daily basis, and probably those within the government and all those institutions are too. So I don't know.
God, he's like you brought someone to dinner and you said, you know what, I got this, and he just looks for the highest price. You need to understand how this person works. I just want to read one or two of the comments because I saw some funny ones. So, Quid Pro Cuomo, that's kind of funny, says, we must invade Alpha Centauri to deal with the trisolar threat. If you get that reference, we can be friends. And yes, I did read the 3-body problem, so I do get that reference anyway. Let's see. Gabby Marita says, Donald Trump and his administration is the antithesis of reliable intelligence in every conceivable way. I mean, look, I made a reference to the Bush administration. There wasn't much oversight then, obviously, and they still got the war that they wanted. But now it's at best we get a punchline out of how little they care about convincing the American people that this is a serious threat that we need to face. Like we talked about the checks and balances in terms of war powers and the legislature not being there. None of them are there. They don't even have to put on a good show anymore. And we know now coming out of this impeachment inquiry that he's not going to be removed for literally anything. Like it doesn't matter if it's a war, like he could launch us into a war totally on his own, specifically to benefit his own business interests, whatever hypothetical you can come up with. It doesn't matter. If he gets another 4 years, he's going to spend them how he wants.
Well, that's absolutely true, especially when you have Republican lawmakers who will make excuses for him or cover up for his crimes. So if Democrats want a strategy that's more effective, you go after the Republican lawmakers who have covered up for his criminality. I know I sound like a broken record. I've made this point a billion times on the show. But it's not just about Trump. It's about this entire political structure that's been taken over by people who want to cover up his crimes. And so attack those vulnerable senators. There's at least 6 of them on the right that are facing tough re-election campaigns right now. Go after them aggressively. You shouldn't just rely on the right wing, the Lincoln Project, to put out vicious ads attacking them. You know, these are the never Trumpers who have a huge problem with Donald Trump and with the Republican lawmakers helping him out. Why aren't Democrats doing that every single day? Hit them and hit them hard.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.